because so many people were critical of Brock Purdy, but I don't think people realized that his numbers against the blitz were absolutely fantastic. The Niners scored 30 again. He was incredible in the second half of the game. He got blitzed in a dizzying array of times by Martindale, the defensive coordinator for the Giants, and yet he took care of the football. They scored 30 points. They had a balanced offensive attack with run pass. And the big number is they didn't turn it over. And a lot of that's on Brock Purdy.
Yeah, absolutely. Purdy's playing at an extremely high level. Last night, like you mentioned, the blitz that Martindale kept throwing at him, 33 out of 39 dropbacks. They blitzed him. Purdy hits 20 of 31 against that blitz, 247 yards, 2 touchdowns. And, the big throw to Deebo Samuel, we're going to be talking about that one. But, really the throw to Ronnie Bell, that first one, that's exactly what Brock Purdy brings to this offense. The ability to get the ball out quick, beat the rush, puts the ball right on the rookie's hands. The rookie turns around, the ball's right there, and then he does a really good job of getting his feet down in bounds. But his ability to beat the rush, that's, I think, what's separating him from everybody else. Just all the discussions that we've had around Brock Purdy this entire offseason and even so far in the beginning of this year, just has really, I think, missed the point of what is making him so good.
And I mean, it wasn't like if you watch some of those throws, I mean, he had a throw that went to George Kittle that could have been picked, except Kittle played the defensive back role and batted it down. There was a throw to the end zone in the first half to Deebo Samuel that just kind of floated out there, and Deebo had a good hand in that. Was like 50-50 ball, and it was probably thrown a little too softly, and it was a little off target. But when you look at Purdy's numbers overall, 25 of 37, he threw for 310 yards, 2 touchdowns. The big one, though, is no picks, no interceptions. And that to me is really the part of this that, there's a lot of people out there that were saying, oh, Brock Purdy was bad. The Niners won, but Brock Purdy was bad. The Giants blitzed Purdy on 33 of 39 dropbacks. They blitzed 85% of the time. Versus the blitz, he went 20 of 31 with 247 total yards passing and 2 touchdowns and did not turn it over. His average snap to release was 2.42 seconds. That would be the 3rd fastest time in the NFL this season if extrapolated over all 3 weeks, behind only Tua and Joe Burrow. And then when you mix in the fact that New York had this wild high blitz rate and they brought an array of exotic blitzes, if you watched what Joshua Dobbs did in the second half the week before against Arizona, against the same blitzes, and then watch Purdy handle it this week, Dobbs has more experience than Purdy, but Purdy looked like the veteran and Dobbs looked like the rookie.
Yeah, it's those. You look at this game, and you kind of mentioned it. The first possession of the game, the 49ers go down and they get points, but it was an odd series for Purdy. He wasn't sharp in the beginning. It's easy to point that out. The throw to George Kittle was from the watching that game, watching it from up top, it was like, oh no, that's going to be a pick, and Kittle comes across, makes a really nice play to knock that ball away, and it was a rough start, but they figured it out, and he got better and better as the game went along. And I think, you pointed out the blitz numbers. I'd be interested to see what the numbers were for Dak Prescott against this team in week 1. Because you go back and right now everybody's talking about how the Cowboys beat them by 40, all this stuff. But the 49ers scored 30 points last night on offense against this Giants defense on a short week. And the Dallas Cowboys, they scored 26. And it was the first game of the season. It wasn't a short week. They had plenty of time to prepare for that one. They only scored 26 points, 14 of those points for them in week 1, coming off of a blocked field goal attempt and an interception return for a touchdown. The 49ers are so good right now on offense. Brock Purdy in particular, with his ability to put the ball in tight spots, ability to beat the blitz. One of his other better throws that we doesn't even count on the stat sheet because it ends up as no play, was the deep ball that he threw to Christian McCaffrey down the left sideline. He put that thing right on him where it needs to be put, right on his hands, and the linebacker did a really nice job at the end of the play to knock the ball away. But again, he started off struggling, but he came back. Kyle Shanahan figured out said, let's reel it in a little bit, gave him some easy completions to kind of get rolling. And then as the game wore along, he got better. And I think the other piece to this was no Brandon Ayuk. And so you didn't have receivers quite getting the separation that you had before. And so, they had to figure out, the offense was completely different last night in some ways, because I don't know if I've seen the 49ers run two tight ends as much as I saw last night in a very long time.
Yeah, they used a lot of two tight end formations. They moved Kittle all over the formation. He was lined up at fullback in a couple snaps in the backfield. You take away, arguably your number one receiver, definitely your hottest receiver this summer in Brandon Ayuk. And then, there were several boxes that they wanted to get accomplished. I mean, they wanted to use CMC, but also work in Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason. They did that. They wanted to have close to a 50-50 run-pass split. They wound up on the night with 37 passes and 39 runs. Check that box. You knew, at least I knew after I watched the all 22 in the second half of week 2 Giants Cardinals, that the Giants were going to bring the house blitz wise, because they had a lot of success with it with Dobbs, and Purdy's a young player. And I'm sure they thought, well, it worked against Dobbs. Let's try it against Purdy. And, it's one thing to go up against a defense that is early in the year bringing the blitz at a high rate. But when they're bringing exotic blitzes at a almost a historically high rate, and you're operating on a short week where there really is only a day and a half of preparation for the players, to me, I thought this was an outstanding performance, all things considered. I know the Twitter audience was like, yeah, Purdy was bad. I think that's just too simplistic. I think when you factor in Ayuk, when you factor in how desperate the Giants were, when you factor in the veteran coordinator Martindale and how effective his blitz packages were in week 2, and then you look at the fact that Purdy didn't turn it over. They had nice run pass balance. I think it was, all things considered. I know it wasn't aesthetically pleasing in the first half, but man, I mean, Brock Purdy, the Niners were 7 of 10 on third down conversions. That's the quarterback down in the first half. That's a good number. And they had a 11-point lead at the break. So it's not like the first half was some train wreck. They were up 17-6. And then, in the second half, Purdy's 11 of 14 for 153 yards and a touchdown. That's pretty damn good when you factor in how much he was being blitzed and exactly how many different blitzes he was facing.
Oh yeah, no, it was really good. I think the other thing too, I pointed out that first possession, because Purdy was only 3 of 8 in that possession. He was 14 of 23 overall in the first half. You mentioned right now that they were up by 11 at that point. Well, he was 3 of 8 in that first drive, but after that point, he was 11 of 15 for the rest of the half. It wasn't like he was missing all over the field throughout the entire first half. He had a rough first series. They figured it out, and 11 of 15, a touchdown, a little over 100 yards, about 115 yards or so after that. And it was a really nice performance by Purdy overall. Again, at some point, I promised the Twitter folks that continue to talk about the weak points in Brock Purdy's game, I promise you that at some point he's going to lose a game. At some point you're going to be right. It's going to happen at some point. He's not going to go undefeated for his career. He's going to throw an interception this year at some point. But let's reel it back for a second. Like you said, Larry, what was it? 25 of 37, 310, 2 touchdowns, a pass rating of 111. If that's a bad game, give that to me every week, because that is high level quarterback play in the NFL.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because, people talked so much about, well, he lacks arm strength. And then last week they're questioning the fact that he overthrew 3 receivers. So shouldn't that kind of put the arm strength debate away? But no, people still wanted to complain, because it's like, I just get the feeling that there's people, and whatever, there's always going to be haters. I mean, I asked Aaron Banks earlier this week about Purdy and how he's playing. He said, I think he's playing terrific. And I said, well, there is an awful lot of criticism. He's like, hey man, there's always going to be haters. There's always going to be haters. And just to hear Aaron Banks say it that way, it really is true. But you do get the sense that there are people out there that are just waiting. Oh, they're so eager to, like, Brock's not good enough. This Brock's the problem, and trying to center on him as the issue. There were people at around halftime that were kind of circling on Twitter like, "Oh, this is a really, this is going to be a bad game." And then you look up at the end of the game and you're like, as you said, 25 of 37, 310 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was only sacked twice despite being blitzed all night long. So he didn't have a huge amount of negative plays. He threw away some passes, and he didn't turn it over. I mean, he did fumble the one time, but he fell on the fumble. And he spread the ball around. I mean, it's like, I just think that we're at this point now where the people that don't want to believe in Brock Purdy are just, they're out there and they're just trying to critique every possible thing. And it's like, short week, number one receiver not there, blitzed like crazy. And it's like, still, it's nothing the guy does is ever going to be good enough. I know a lot of those people came around in the second half, but there's still, you get the sense that they're, as you kind of stated, at some point those people are going to be right. At some point they're going to lose. At some point he's going to throw a game costing interception. But it is unfortunate that it's kind of, they're 3-0, they're looking great. The players and coaches feel great about Brock Purdy, and yet there is a segment of the Niner fandom that's out there going, I can't wait, like rubbing their hands together at the idea that he may fail.
Yeah, it's, we didn't get a chance to talk after the game against the Rams. We're talking after 2 games here, and I mentioned the throw last night. Like, one of the things that I've seen on Twitter was how he was inaccurate against the Rams and those types of things and what have you. But you look at the game last night, I talked about the touchdown pass to Bell where he gets that ball out of his hands so early. Bell's not even cutting yet, and the ball's already out of his hands because he's got a blitz coming. Go back to the game.
He threw it to a spot, basically.
Yeah, basically just threw it right to where Bell was supposed to get to, and he put it right on him. And, you go back to the game against the Rams, and there was a play in which he hits Juwan Jennings down the middle. And the pass looks like it's behind Jennings because he has to spin around and catch it. Well, if you just take a second and you watch the all-22, watch the film breakdown that I did or anybody did, that's an amazing throw by Brock Purdy in that he's got a free rusher coming from his right side. He's sliding to his left, and he's throwing the ball. As he's throwing the ball, Juwan Jennings still goes another 5 yards vertically in his route before making the end cut. That's how early that pass came out. And it's a completion for a big gain for 15, 17, 18 yards, whatever it was. And that's the kind of stuff that he does with regularity. He makes the offensive, for
the anticipatory years, throws that Trey Lance never could make.
A lot of NFL quarterbacks can't do that. That's one of the things we've heard about a lot with Tom Brady, was his ability to help his offensive lineman out because he got the ball out quick and on time. And that's what you see with Brock Purdy with regularity is that ball comes out. If there's a guy open, he gets it out. Last night, you mentioned the throwaways. We're seeing a lot more throwaways from Brock Purdy than we saw from Jimmy Garoppolo in the past, or really other 49ers quarterbacks in recent 49er history. He's not afraid to throw it away. That's why he hasn't turned the ball over in terms of interceptions yet through the first 3 weeks, even though he's had some close calls.